Hello and welcome to another edition of Ask the Experts here on City News 570. I'm joined today by Faisal Susiwala. Faisal is ranked within the top 3 real estate brokers in the world for RE/MAX and was recently named Canada's top agent. Faisal began his career at the young age of 18 and has been providing outstanding results for over 30 years now, most notably with RE/MAX Twin City Realty. Faisal is here today to talk everything from where the market is right now to what happens when the government wants your land. Welcome back to the show, Faisal.
Thank you.
Listeners, yeah, thanks for having us. And listeners, if you're interested in any of the information we discuss over this next hour, you can reach out to Faisal directly. You can start your journey at homeshack.com. You can call him directly, 519-624-5555, or email Faisal at homeshack.com. Lots to talk about today, Faisal. If we jump right in and take a look at a market update, for example, how was July and August in terms of sales and pricing?
Well, July and August were a little bit slower than what we were hoping or expecting, both in terms of price and sales activity were down significantly in July and August. And that's primarily due to the shock to people's system due to the interest rate increase back in late June, early July. And that impact was really felt over the summer months. So what we had was a pause in interest rate increase from January till about June. We had no increase. And that was a catalyst to increased values. So we actually saw a gain in real estate values in our region of up to 10% across the board, single detached condos, semis and whatnot. And then we saw everybody sort of hitting the sidelines as soon as his rates went up. So now what we're finding is that people are just having a second thought, looking at their finances, seeing the renewals come in, and then just contemplating whether or not, this is the opportunity they want to take to buy or sell or just sit on the sidelines. And most people have chosen to just pause right now.
Historically, do things normally slow down in the summer months as well?
Yes, if we take COVID out of the picture, historically we would see the season is very strong, March, April, May, and early part of June. Then holiday season begins at the end of June when kids are out of school. So July, first couple of weeks are very slow typically. And then there's not a lot of runway left between mid-July or mid-June to end of August when school commences again in September. So we're finding that people are now really focused on March, April, May purchases so they can settle in by June and July and be ready for the next school year, especially in our region where majority of the purchasing is happening from non-local buyers that are coming in from the GTA, and they have to set some roots before the beginning of summer or school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The other thing too, I would suppose, is a lot of is there a portion of our market too that it's parents making purchases for children that are at colleges or universities and looking at an investment, and those I guess we're kind of we're focusing on certain times of the year when those things would be happening as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Parents are out there looking at, because again, along with the rental housing crisis right across the board, students are having a very difficult time finding accommodation. Even in our region, my kids go to London, friends' kids go to Waterloo, and it's a real challenge. If you haven't got accommodation set up, or if you thought that, this year, as soon as school is done, we'll just give the apartment up. My kids are in London. I kept paying rent throughout the summer, just to ensure that I had secured tenancy for my kids when they go back to school in September. And those who didn't do that were facing some major challenges in finding homes. So yeah, purchasing a rental property with student housing in mind has become very popular. And later on in the show, we'll talk about the impact of the rates on those buyers as well. But that is one of the purchasers that we're dealing with now is just rental buyers.
Good information for us to have, especially in this region. Bank of Canada held at 5%. So, what impact does that have on the market, and how will that impact on inflation as well?
Well, a pause is generally looked at as a positive sign for the market. But I think people are just cautious. They're apprehensive about, is this pause real? Is this temporary? Was this just to appease all the premiers who were begging the Bank of Canada not to increase the rate? Because if the increase did happen, I believe that it would have had a devastating effect on the market currently. 5 was sort of the tolerable number, and people had thought that if it gets there, we don't have the latest inflation numbers. At least I don't have them yet. So we're still looking at that 3.3, up from the 2.8 back in June. I believe that if the inflation rate does not go down beyond the 3.3, that late October, I think, is when the next announcement is due. We will see an increase in our interest rates, because that seems to be the only tool that seems to be working to control inflation. Remember, we've gone from a low in the last 3 years of 2.81 in June was the inflation. We came off of a 7.59 last year.
That's right.
So, we're down significantly. We're less than half of that, but it's affecting consumer spending. That is happening, and I think that's
Right.
part of what needed to happen. But it hasn't really impacted gas prices. They're still up. Grocery prices are still up. We're not seeing that. So really, the only market sector that's being affected, really in a major way, and it's hurting most people, is the housing sector.
And that's we look at that, that's a huge impact, as you said, with groceries and everything else. But when push comes to shove and we take a look at the end of the month, right, is there still money in the bank account, or is there more month to go? It's a big one, and I think we're all feeling that pinch as well too. So, and I know that people are paying attention, especially with when they're looking at interest rates, they're looking at what the government's deciding to do, and I think you're right. There's this sort of cautious optimism maybe right now, but it also feels like people are kind of holding their breath a little bit.
Yeah, and if you look at the biggest challenge is if you bought a home in 2018, and let's say it was a $700,000 home, the
Right.
interest rate in 2018 was between 3 to 3.2% for that home. Fast forward 5 years brings you to today, 2023. The interest rate today is 6.2%. Now, even though you have paid down your mortgage in 5 years, and hopefully you didn't take a HELOC, a home
Right.
line equity credit, and you didn't increase your mortgage, but let's say you didn't increase your mortgage and you had that $700,000 mortgage. Now it's down to, say, close to 600,000. You paid off between 80 to 100,000. When that renewal comes in today at 6.2%, instead of your mortgage payment going down
Mm.
because you owe less money, it's actually going up by about $1,200 on a $700,000
Wow.
mortgage. So that's a very big impact to most households, because you can't prepare for that. And you certainly didn't get that kind of a raise in most
No.
cases to
No.
accommodate for that increase. So it's going to hurt a lot of people. And I don't think we've seen the pain or the bloodshed on the streets yet. I think people are sustaining they're maintaining what they can. I'm dealing with families every day right now that are speaking exactly to the fact that, look, we've paid down our mortgage, but our rate has doubled, and we just don't have the bandwidth to be able to manage this type of payments, and we're going to have to sell our homes.
Right. Is there an opportunity in some cases for someone to take the amortization and lengthen that out to, say, 30 years if it was smaller, or less than that, or is that really not going to make much of a difference?
It will make a difference, but I think that stretching it to 30 years is a challenge. And certainly I'm not a mortgage specialist, but it's a great conversation to have with a mortgage specialist. Do we have enough amortization available to be able to stretch it out? Will they give me 30 years? In most cases, banks don't really want to go over
Mhm.
25 right now, and they're just being very cautious as well.
It's important for us to have these conversations. I know friends of ours that they were in that exact same situation, and he said it's an extra $1,000 a month. So he said, I'm a problem solver. We've decided to take in a renter. Not everybody can do that, right? But that's kind of the mindset that some people are in right now. But important information for us to have for sure. We're coming up on a break here on Ask the Experts. When we come back, we're going to look ahead to the fall a little bit. Stay with us here on City News 570. Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Canada's top real estate broker and author of the book, The Real Deal, billion-dollar real estate broker, Faisal Susiwala. If you'd like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, you can start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or through email, faisal@homeshack.com. Faisal, before the break, we were talking about how things had gone during the summer months, and maybe some cautious optimism, but some people are maybe holding their breath at this point. Are there any government incentives or relief that's going to come to battle the housing crisis that we're dealing with right now?
Yeah, so the Canadian Housing Minister, Sean Fraser, was evaluating what can we do, what options are there, and some of those options include some tax incentives for builders to build, and that could be, dealing with the GST on materials and whatnot. So again, we don't have a clear picture. This was just announced very, very recently that there are some options being looked at right now. Now, that's great. I think that's a positive sign, as long as those savings are being passed on to consumers. The other incentive that will be available is lower cost financing to builders, provided there is a affordable housing component
Right.
in the development. So what percentage that is, I'm not sure. I've heard as high as 30% of any development should have some component of low-income housing or cost-effective housing. And I think there's a need for that. We can't just go building luxury condos everywhere.
Right.
And that's why we're seeing a shift in the market now, and seeing a lot of that happening. There's a lot of money that was allocated by the provinces for municipalities. I just don't know where that money is being used.
Right.
It was supposed to be used to make the municipalities more efficient. I don't know if that's actually happened yet. I haven't seen the benefits of the efficiencies yet, but I hope that does start coming into our marketplace. Time efficiency is very important. I know that some of the autonomy has been taken away from the municipalities, and more from a
Right.
provincial level. There's some mandates for building houses faster. I'd like to see that, but then on the flip side of it, builders are saying, talking of what can the government do, builders are saying, well, there's no market right now. I'm
Mhm.
not to go out and build a 2,000 square foot home in a new subdivision where I've paid 15,000 a front foot for the lot. So to translate that, 50-foot lot, $750,000 for the lot,
Right.
$300 a square foot to build that 2,000 square foot home. Add $600,000, you're at 1.3 million, 1.35 million. The resale home equivalent to that can be purchased on the resale market today, somewhere around $1 million.
Mhm.
That developer or builder is saying, wait, why would I go ahead and put this type of product out in the market today when there's no audience for it and they can go and buy resale? The times that builders were thriving was when the resale home market equated to what the new home was. So you could buy
Right.
a $1.3 million resale or a $1.3 million new, and people resonated with the new because they get what they want.
Right. Right.
Hey, that is just not there. And I think it's going to be a while before we see that market. So that just adds to the home crisis that we have. If you
Right.
can't build homes, and we all have discussed the mandate that the region has, we need 80,000 homes in the next 7 years. I'm not quite sure where that is going to come from when we can't build. And it's not cost effective to build, and then the bureaucracy, the red tape that's involved, and the lack of incentives for builders to build. So
Right.
yes, let's incentivize builders. Let's give them the tools and the options and cut the red tape, and let's get things going. And that's where we have to look at that, and let's put that money to use where it's needed.
And I know the province has been, talking about having to build more homes, and the one number that was thrown around the other day was building homes that would cost someone $500,000. But I'm thinking, I don't know where those homes would be and where that price point would be set at, say, 450 or $500,000. I don't. Are we past that? Can we get back to that, or are we looking at tiny homes? Like what? How would we get back to a price like that?
Well, the stacked project, right? The stacked
Mm.
homes, and I've mentioned I'm doing one right now at Mill and Queen Street in Kitchener. We're doing another project at Northfield in
Right.
Waterloo. These are priced efficiently and effectively to get those buyers into affordable housing. What
Right.
I mean is that you're looking at about $550, $600 per square foot. That makes sense. So
Right.
yes, you can buy a 600 square foot starter stacked townhome unit somewhere in that, 400, $450,000 range. That still makes sense today to do that.
Mhm.
We have units that are as low as $350,000 if you're looking for a studio apartment. But that's your stepping stone to getting into the housing market. If you're hoping to find a home at $500,000 with a white picket fence and a garage, it's not going to happen. In our region, I think we're far from it right now.
And that's a good point. And you've talked about this in the past. Get your foot in the door, get started, start somewhere. And as you said, it's not your first home most likely isn't going to be your dream home. And I think the example in our family, for my wife and I, we had a little town home. It was good for the two of us. And then when the two kids came along, it was time to look for something bigger. And it's being, instead of that idea of, you want this yesterday, you've got to wait a little bit and put your time in. And that's easier said than done. I get that, but get your foot in the door and move on from there. We talked a little bit about this. I mentioned the story of my friend and having to rent out part of the home. What can homeowners be doing right now to help them get through the higher interest rate renewals? What other kinds of things can we be doing?
Well, I think exactly like what your friend did was exactly what people should be doing. They have to get out of their comfort zone. We have to look at options. So if you've got a home where you have additional bedrooms you're not using, an office you're not using, we know there is a huge need for student housing. Students are looking to rent rooms wherever they can get a room, and there's a challenge in accommodating students. So the average could be anywhere from $600 to $800 per room. And
Mhm.
that's sufficient to get you through that hump of that higher interest rate, that new renewal that you're getting. So open your sort of options up to that. If you've got a basement apartment, now a basement apartment, or if you can create a basement apartment, now let's just say, and I know, in these times where we don't want to take on additional debt, but if it's good debt, if it makes sense. So if your ROI, your return on your investment, is going to give you 10% or 12% return on that, or even more in most cases. So let's just take the average 1,000 square foot home that has a basement that may have a rec room. It may have a bedroom already in it. So you may have to put an egress window, make sure it's fire safety. You might have to go through some zoning issues and whatnot. But again, it's becoming a lot more lenient now that we have this crisis.
Right.
You may need to add a kitchen. Most of these homes have a bathroom or at least a rough-in. So let's just ballpark it at $50,000, which is a
Right.
lot of money. But if you can come up with $50,000 and that generates $1,800 a month income, well, I'll tell you, if I could go out there and buy rental units for $50,000 and get $1,800 a month income, I would
Yeah.
do that all day long
Right.
because we were spending $500,000 to get a stacked unit, and then you're getting $2,200 or 2,000, but you're paying 10x, 10 times what it would cost to put. So perhaps instead of looking for that investment property now, look at creating an investment property within your household, get that rental income coming in, helps you pay for a lot of that. And if you're an empty nester or if you have that space available, instead of downsizing or going out there, because you'll be shocked, you may not get the kind of money you want for your home. And then
Right.
you're going to turn around and try to buy something and you can't get quite what you want, or you're getting half of what you just gave up
Right.
at almost the same price, or you're going to rental, which is going to cost you a lot more money. We're getting $2,400, $2,500 two bedrooms, basement apartments. So you can see where the rent market is going. So those are great options. Tiny homes, excellent option. If you're away, if you've got a place in Florida or if you've got a cottage,
Right.
instead of letting it sit vacant the months you're not using it, start generating some income out of those as well. So there's options always available. It's just uncomfortable. Most people don't want to have a stranger moving into their home. They don't want to have to create accommodation when they've been used to independent living. And I get that. But the alternative is you could be looking at some financial distress and ultimately having to sell your home. So get uncomfortable for a couple of years and make it work.
And you talked about that idea of if you're downsizing, and as you said, you might not get what you're looking for on one end, and on the other end, unless you're willing to pull up your stakes and move to out east or up north or something like that, you're in this market. You know what this market is like right now. So you got to be careful what it is that you're looking for, and it's good information for us to look at. That idea as well. Like you're not ready to to move to PEI. You still want to be here. As you said, you might have to get a little creative with things, but it's it rather than giving up your home, rather than having to look at that a rental. It's important for you to be able to look at all of those things. And you've said this from for the last 6 or 7 months that here we are coming out of the last time you even thought about your mortgage was back in 2018. Well, it's a little too late right now. This is the situation you find yourself in, but important for us to look at that. We will take another break. We'll get an update from the City News 570 News Center. When we come back, is it still a good time to buy or sell real estate? We're going to ask Faisal that question. Stay with us here on City News 570. Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Canada's top real estate broker and author of the book, The Real Deal, billion-dollar real estate broker, Faisal Susiwala. If you'd like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, you can start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or through email, faisal@homeshack.com. At the beginning of the show, Faisal, we talked a bit about what was going on in the summer, and we always ask you to bring out that crystal ball. Any idea what we should be expecting to see in the market when we get to, let's say, around Halloween, the end of October?
Yeah, so I think October 26th is the next announcement expected from the Bank of Canada. We've kind of expected that there might be a rate hike coming in September, but that didn't happen. But as we've heard, it's not off the table.
Right.
And it's expected that if the inflation numbers continue to go the wrong direction, which is up, then we will see another rate hike. Now, that would be devastating to the market. If it's 0.25% or whatever that number is, it will hurt us. Now, there's a lot of financial analysts, economists that are saying that it's unlikely that will happen, that it cannot happen. It would be just something that would be devastating to everyone across the board: builders, first-time home buyers, people who own homes, people who are having renewals. So there's some thought that it could actually start declining after October and into the spring. That's an optimistic sort of view. I'm an optimist, I certainly think, but I don't believe that values will start jumping up that quickly, because people have sort of gone through that roller coaster. We saw what the pause did between January and June. We didn't see, we saw a 10% increase in the market, and then instantly we saw a 5 to 7% decline as soon as the rate went up. So I think people are just cautious now and saying, well, I'm not going to react to anything, whether the rate goes up or goes down. I'll just do nothing for a little while. So it will take some time for the good news to start coming back into the market, people feeling confident again, going and buying. But until we see these rates drop to 4%, I don't think we're going to see numbers that we saw for probably 2.5 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So it's a long game, and we've talked about that before as well. That that blip that we talked about that had happened, back a year and a half ago. We just put that in the back in the rearview mirror, because it's where we're at right now is We know prices have gone up across the board, and if it is that sort of wait and see mentality, people have to be ready to sit. As you said, it could be 2.5 years, but that's where we're headed. So we'll keep our eyes peeled for October the 26th. We'll see what comes out of the announcement there. So I guess the question is, it's still a good time to buy or sell real estate. How do you encourage people to still be active in the market?
It's relative. It's still a good time to buy from the perspective of price.
Right.
We know that we are down 20 to 25% over the highs that we've seen. We're nowhere near recovery. We're nowhere near the prices that people have paid until last year, March.
Mhm.
So there's an opportunity if you're a first-time home buyer or someone who was in the market and couldn't find a home to now enter the market. But be mindful of the term that you take on your interest rate. Don't lock in for 5 years if what everyone is saying, all the economists are saying that the rates will come down. If we're expecting the rates will come down closer to 4% in the next 2 years, well, there's your answer.
Right.
Yes, you're going to pay a higher interest rate for the next 2 years, but you've just saved $200,000 over what you would have paid when the rates were really low.
Mhm.
You would have paid a higher price point, which means it would take you longer to pay that off, wouldn't it? And it would take a lot more cash over time being utilized in interest payments because your mortgage is going to be that much longer to pay off. So right now you have an opportunity to buy at a realistic price, buy at probably below market value, purchase with some thoughtfulness because you're not in as many bidding wars. And as long as you lock in only for, a 2-year mortgage, which is probably going to be around that 6.2%,
Right.
you're still comfortable enough to say, okay, I'll weather the storm. And even if you do the math and the calculation on it, and it's costing you an extra $10,000 a year because of the higher interest rate, hypothetically, that's only
Mhm.
$20,000 over 2 years, but you save 200,000. So when the rates go back down, you're going to be that much further ahead. Now, if you're a seller, if you're selling your home today, and you said to me, and I had these conversations with people every day, if you're selling today and you're going to go into a rental, I say don't sell your home today.
Okay.
Hold on, because you're now coming out of the game. You're sitting on the sidelines, and we don't know what the market's going to do. So
Right.
your money is probably going to grow faster sitting in your home than if you take your money, go into a rental, and sit and with that money in the bank. It's not going to grow that quickly. Mind you, we're seeing 5.5% GICs right now. So I could be wrong on that. So maybe if you're a gambler and you want to take a 1-year GIC with your equity, you might come out a little bit further ahead. But if you're buying and selling, or if you're, for example, if you're selling your home to buy another home, it's all relative.
Right.
You're going to get 20% less for your home than you would have if you sold that March of 2022, but you're going to pay 20% less. So it's all relative, and your investment vehicle is still there. You haven't given up your opportunity to follow the market gains. So
Right.
you're still winning. You're not any further behind. In fact, you might be further ahead because of the same reason that you're not getting into bidding wars or you're not overpaying for something that you would have, say, 2 years ago.
And I think for some people that might be that sort of knee jerk reaction, right? We sell it, we're gonna sit in the rental market for a couple of years. But if you stack them up side by side, when you're sitting in the home that you're actually paying that mortgage off, that home, that's yours, right? And it's only going to increase in value as long as you're there, and you're paying off someone else's mortgage as soon as you make that jump into the rental market. We know not everyone necessarily can be in that same situation, but I mean, I've said this before. When I take a look at my mortgage payment right now, I couldn't get an apartment for basically that, right? So it makes sense for us just to keep where we are. And if the rate does go up, or if I'm looking at having to lock in for say 2 years, 2 years from now, I'm going to be able to reap the benefits of having made that decision to go that route.
Yeah, and in fact, I had this conversation with a client today where their mortgage payment is going to go up $1,000 per month. And they thought, well, we should just sell the property and rent for a little while. So we did the math. They were paying $4,000 a month right now.
Right.
An equal home they could go out and rent. It'll probably cost them $3,500 a month. So they're only saving $500 a month by going into a rental property because their family needs are still to have that size of home. So $1,000 it goes up, but you're only saving $500 a month. Really, it doesn't make sense because by the time you pay the fees, the commission, the legal fees, the penalty to get out of that mortgage, you're into, on the average price of a home, $50,000 to $60,000 in costs.
Right.
Because you are trying to save $12,000 that year. So be really mindful of, are you achieving what you're actually setting out to do? Are you actually saving money? Because that $12,000 a year that you would have paid for the next 2 years is recoverable when the market goes back up. But that $60,000 that you just spent today because of you want to get out of that mortgage to save that extra $1,000 a month, it's going to take a long time for you to ever recover that money.
And I'm glad to hear you say that too, though, Faisal, because people are comfortable enough, as you said, to come and talk to you about that. And you you kind of, not to say you're a disinterested third party, but you can take a step back and say, well, look at it. Let's compare these two things, because oftentimes, especially if someone's looking at that pinch of an extra, whatever it happens to be on their mortgage, a lot of those decisions end up being emotional ones. And if you can stop for a second and actually look at the numbers and say, hey, let's stack these up side by side, you're going to come out ahead if you stay where you are for now and ride it out. And I'm glad to hear you say that, because I know that's for the clients that you work with, they're comfortable enough coming to talk to you about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I spend a lot of time, believe it or not, talking people out of selling their homes because we don't want, and it sounds really odd coming from a real estate agent that you shouldn't sell your house, but it's because, at some point they're going to realize they made the wrong decision.
Right.
And there's no point in helping somebody make the wrong decision for whatever benefit someone may feel that they're getting out of it. So it's always that thoughtfulness that needs to go in and say, yes, I get it. Optically, I'd save $1,000 a month by selling this house right now and going into a rental. But let's do the math. Let's look at the cost. Let's look at the penalties. Let's look at the cost of getting out of this situation. Sometimes that's going to make it prohibitive, and you don't even know what you're getting yourself into until you've already done it.
Good to know. Important information for everyone to be hearing. We'll take a final break here on Ask the Experts. When we come back, how the LRT impacts real estate. You're listening to Ask the Experts here on City News 570. Welcome back to the show. My guest today, Faisal Susiwala, also known as Canada's top real estate broker. Listeners, if you'd like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, you can start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly at 519-624-5555 or through email, faisal@homeshack.com. Before the break, Faisal, we were talking about, is it still a good time to buy or sell? We have also been talking about, what homeowners can do to help them get through higher interest rates and so on. So how would higher interest rates affect investors and maybe ultimately the rental market as well? What goes on there?
Yeah, so the interest rates, they affect everyone, and especially investors, because the investor is not a cash buyer typically. They are buyers that are leveraging, other people's money. So the bank's money has to come in to finance that deal so they can buy multiple properties and grow their investment portfolio. When they are borrowing at the same rates you and I are, at 6.25% for that mortgage, they're looking at their spend. So if they're going to spend $600,000 or $700,000 on a property to create a rental unit, their mortgage payment is going to be probably double what it would have been back when the prices were even higher. So that money has to be recoverable. So if the output, and we've talked about cash flow. I'm not overly fussy about having major cash flow because I buy for appreciation more than cash flow. But today, you don't want negative cash flow. So if you're in balance, it's fine. But if you're out of pocket $1,500, $2,000 a month because you bought an investment property at 6.25%, that money's got to be recovered somewhere. So how do you recover it? You charge a higher rent. If you're buying a property that is already rented out to an existing tenant, that property is definitely not going to carry. So an investor is saying, I have no interest in buying a property with tenants in it
Mhm.
because I'm not going to be able to jack the rents up, and therefore my interest rate is going to be too high. It doesn't make any sense for me to make this investment. So this is where investors are saying, if I'm going to get 5% on my money by investing in a real estate option here, I might as well leave my money in my GIC and earn 5.25%, 5.5% without any risk. It's guaranteed money. So this is why we're going to have a bigger crisis. Investors saying, I'm not buying, I'm not renting. And if I am renting, I need a massive premium on my rent in order for this investment to make sense. Otherwise, I'll leave my money in the bank and get interest on it.
Right.
So again, there's a big problem with this. All comes back to the crisis. It all comes down to interest rates. And until those interest rates start coming down, until inflation is under control, until there's supply chain and material available at a reasonable cost, and labor available at reasonable cost, or just labor available,
Right.
we're going to see this crisis continue for the next 10 years.
Important, and it's like that old, you drop the pebble in and you watch the ripples effect, and that's exactly what's going to be happening there as well too. Important for everyone to be aware of these things. We know around the region we see there's a lot of construction. We've heard the LRT is planning on expanding into to Cambridge. So and when the region looks at properties, whether it be LRT expansion, whether it be road widening or roundabouts, the term is expropriation. So, in a nutshell, what does that all mean to a home buyer if they happen to be, let's say, in property that the government deems to be important and they need to be able to make use of it?
So yeah, I've been involved in several incidents where there's expropriation either pending or it's happened or it's going to happen. And every scenario is very different. You should always consult with an expropriation lawyer. So when you get a letter from the region or anyone, municipality, saying that your land or your home has been identified kind of for the greater good of the community to be demolished so we can widen the road, put a roundabout in, put the LRT in, or whatever needs to be happening in order to create the infrastructure. So the region, the municipalities have the ability to basically knock on your door, give you a little bit of time, and cut you a check. It's up to you now to challenge them, to say, well, you didn't pay enough. Well, there is a process. You will have the option to go back and forth and negotiate. Rarely are you as a buyer going to or a homeowner going to feel that you got fair value for your property, and rarely does the region feel that they didn't overpay you. So there's always a disconnect, and that's where an expropriation lawyer is very important to have on your team. The challenge with the expropriation process is that you as a homeowner, landowner, must pay huge fees for appraisals, for legal fees, for consulting fees, for planners, engineers to come up and make your case. We could be talking hundreds of thousands of dollars by the time you plead your case and by the time it gets heard. But in the meantime, they cut you a check and they have the ability to take your land. You don't have a choice in this matter. They can do that. Now, all of that money that you've spent is recoverable. They have to reimburse you, but it's after the fact. So a lot of people are in a position to spend that money to fight the region. So what do? Well, hands up. I'm going to just take what I can get. So don't easily give in. Like, make sure that you understand, at the very least, consult with your trusted realtor to say, hey, I'm being offered X amount for my home because they're going to demolish it and put a road through it. Is that fair value? The other option, the other issue can be that you've been given an expropriation notice, but the expropriation is not going to happen for the next 5 years or 7 years or 9 years when that LRT comes into Cambridge or wherever. Now, as a homeowner, you have this information. You must disclose that to future buyers. So if I'm going to sell my home to you, I have to tell you that, hey, Brock, I'm selling you this house, but in 3 years, there's going to be a road going through it. What are the chances that you're going to want to buy that house? Probably very low.
Exactly.
And there's already a prescribed sort of amount that you're going to get for it. So now what you've done is you've created a situation where you've caused injury to that ability to sell that property, and there should be a payout on that. So it's called injurious affection. And that's, what you would have had. And again, I'm not a lawyer. Consult with a lawyer, consult with a planner, consult with someone who knows municipal law to give you the proper advice, because expropriations are going to happen often. They're going to happen in every region. I've personally been involved in 3 myself.
Wow.
On land properties that I've owned. So I've learned through that process, and I've thought to myself that had I not been in a position to challenge the municipalities that I was involved in, this could have gone very wrong. And I've actually given opinions of value, because I'm not an appraiser, but I've given opinions of value to clients of mine who are under these processes as we speak. And I'm looking at it and saying, well, okay, great. It's great that you want to sell your home. I'm happy to be your agent, but I have a problem. I have to disclose that in 2 years, there's going to be a bypass going through your front living room.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a problem. So these are things that are happening, but know your rights, understand, and don't be quick to just settle. The offers that are being given to people, quite honestly, I feel are disgustingly low and well below what market value should be on someone's home. So look, it's still taxpayers' money. It's still your money and my money that has to be paid out, but let's do it responsibly,
Right.
and let's do it without affecting people's comfort and living.
I would think too that there's power in numbers. So if chances are that they've reached out to you, they've reached out to your neighbors, maybe on either side or down the street, and you might have a case, right? You might be able to say, look, let's talk to a lawyer. Let's see what sort of situation. I think back maybe a decade ago, and it seemed to me it was a highway widening, maybe through Shakespeare, I think, over near Stratford. And it ended up that it never went through, because I think enough people in the community said, look, there are other options. We can do a bypass. We can do something else, because it was and you rally. It doesn't happen very often, but like you said, don't just roll over, take the check and go on. Like, make sure that you ask some questions, and even if you don't, you, as they always say, you can't fight City Hall, but you can try, right? And you can at least ask those questions and find out as much as you can about what your rights are, what your obligations are, and it's important information for people to know that as well.
Yeah, understand what your property value is. I do a lot of evaluations for people, and I always see, there was a little chunk of land taken off the corner, or 20 feet taken off their side yard for road widening, and I see the values that they were paid out. And it just shocks me sometimes that somebody just gave up 20 feet of their side yard for $10,000.
Right.
There was more value than that. So just get a professional in, whether it's an agent, an appraiser, or someone you trust, to come in and give you some, especially if you've lived in that home for 50 years or 60 years, you may not know so to give you an example, land sold by the linear front foot. So if you have a 50 by 100 foot lot, 50 is your front footage, your linear footage is your 50 feet. That could be anywhere as low as 10,000 a front foot to 15,000 a front foot. Now, if they're taking 20 feet of that, even at $10,000, that's $200,000 that you are entitled to getting. So if you're being offered $15,000 or $20,000 for it, I'd love to be able to buy land at $1,000 a front foot.
No kidding. No kidding. Important for people to hear that information. Faisal, I want to thank you for coming on the show again today. Always a pleasure to chat with you, and always learning some new insights as well.
Thank you for having me on, Brock.
And thanks for giving us some of your time. That was Faisal Susiwala, Canada's top real estate broker, recently published author of The Real Deal, billion-dollar real estate broker, and lucky for us, someone willing to share his thoughts on the current real estate market. Big thank you to our technical producer, Devin Robertson, for pushing all the right buttons. And thanks to you, listeners, for joining us. You've been listening to Ask the Experts here on City News 570.